What's up, Cluckers? I'm a frog. Whatever your favorite Halo game is, when you play on Legendary, there's always that one level. You know, that level. The one that you aren't looking forward to from the start because you know it's gonna destroy you. Being the objective observer who's never been wrong about anything that I am, I decided to nominate a few levels throughout the Halo franchise that I think have an argument to be the toughest level in all of Halo and decide which one is the toughest level. We'll go through game by game, just the shooters though, sorry Spartan Assault fans or whatever, and I'll pick out the toughest level or two from that game, and at the end I'll declare a winner. Let's hop in. After escaping the library, you get teleported back to the control room to activate the ring before Cortana calls you stupid and says a bunch of British slang, and thus begins 2 betrayals. It opens with you immediately being shot at by sentinels. Then after this, you have one of the toughest rooms in Halo CE. You only have a shotgun and a plasma pistol, but you have to fight the Covenant at long range, not to mention there are sentinels too. Really tough fight. Then once outside, you have to fight your way down the pyramid, there's a ton of elites at the very bottom. It's a rough start to the level. The few areas after the first phase pulse generator, same thing, just so many Covenant to fight through, then the Flood shows up. This was the first multi-faction level in CE. The 2 bridges where you're fighting both Flood and Covenant are very hectic and easy to die at. After the first bridge, you come to a room with more Flood than any other room in the game. There's a rocket Flood who camps around a corner. You have some of the most difficult rooms in the whole game back to back to back. The level does hit a lull for a bit until you get to the final run. This part you're on foot and it's jam-packed with Covenant and Flood, and at this point in the level on Legendary, you're probably running low on ammo. It's not a good time. 2 Betrayals has some of the most difficult sections in CE and is really long, which is why I think it's one of the toughest Halo levels, period. Immediately after 2 Betrayals, we have Keys. The issue with Keys is really just the outdoor sections in the first half of the level. The end of 2 Betrayals with the final run and the big Covenant versus Flood battles, that's every section to start Keys, except instead of wide open environments, it's confined, making it an absolute nightmare where it's very easy to get overrun. Keys only has one true infinite spawner, that being carrier forms in this part with the ship goose stuff, but there are a lot of spawns that seem infinite because they'll go on for minutes at a time, encouraging you to always push up and get in the middle of the action. If the entire level was like this, I would say Keys is far and away more difficult than 2 Betrayals, but once you get back in the Covenant ship, I think it gets easier until the Keys room, where you have another part where the Flood keeps spawning for so long unless you push up. Then after finding Keys, the Spec Ops Covenant show up, so it gets tougher again towards the ending. 2 Betrayals is a lot longer and more consistently difficult, but I think Keys has the toughest set of encounters in the entire game in its first half. They're the 2 most difficult levels in CE, and that's why Keys is on the list. Honorable mentions: the Library and Truth and Reconciliation. These levels are tough for a lot of players, but I think they're simpler to conquer than Keys and TB. For Library, just be patient and shotgun Flood. For TNR, you have a power weapon the entire level in the sniper rifle. Jumping ahead to Halo 2, we have
the whole game.
What?
Just say all of Halo 2 on Legendary.
No. Anyway. Regret. You have the opening with a few elites and drones, and more importantly, as soon as you step outside, you're hiding from a bunch of Jackal snipers who don't always spawn in the same exact places. And after clearing them out and moving up and getting out of a building, you walk back out and whoop-de-doo, more Jackal snipers have spawned for you to deal with. Clearing the hunters, the gondola rides, the structure that takes the underwater elevator down, nothing too crazy happens until you are underwater and in my least favorite room in the entire game. People complain about Sniper Alley on Outskirts, but this room is so much worse. There's more Sniper Jackals in Sniper Alley, it's dark and they're hard to spot, and you also have Honor Guard elites, drones, and hunters to worry about at the same time. This room is the worst thing ever made by a human. Again, the next couple fights after this are pretty much just standard Halo 2 Legendary, then you get to the ending and the Regret boss fight. I think this is the toughest boss fight in Halo 2 because Tartarus's isn't hard at all, and in the Oracle, you just have the Heretic leader to worry about. If you attack the right one, the holograms go away and checkpoints are generous. In the Regret fight, you have to board him 5 times, and every time you board him, there's a chance you'll just be dropped off in the middle of a bunch of Honor Guard elites and you're screwed. And checkpoints here are not generous at all because the area is always unsafe. Between the 2 big Sniper Jackal areas and the boss fight, I think Regret deserves to be on the list. Next up is Gravemind, which infamously starts like 2 Betrayals with you immediately being shot at. The difference is that this is Halo 2 and you die in 1 second. The opening, I think, is the toughest part of the entire level because for most of it you only have a Needler and Plasma Rifle. Once Carbine brutes spawn and you're able to get a Carbine, it becomes totally fine. You can just headshot everyone. And the fights after this aren't bad at all for that same reason. You just use the Carbine and headshot everything except for a couple Honor Guard brutes that are easy to stick instead. The next infamous part of the mission is the prison. I've heard of the Covenant being instant aggro to people and them just getting caught in a death loop on their way down. This is my favorite level in the franchise and I played it a ton. I have never had that happen to me. I'm not saying that can't happen because I'm sure it does, but when discussing this area, don't speak as if that's a regular occurrence because it's simply not. And when you first come down, what I've always done is just this. Not easy, but simple enough. From that point on, Gravemind to me is just standard Halo 2 Legendary. It's tough, but not more so than the rest of Halo 2 on Legendary. Until the very end, the final fight with the White and Stealth Elites when you're leaving the Mausoleum is really difficult. Even though no other sections after the prison stick out to me, the other thing contributing to Gravemind's difficulty over, say, Regret is the length. It's a really long level, and it has everything that Halo 2 features. This is the only level in Halo 2 where you're fighting every single Covenant enemy, and fighting your way through a Civil War means you find yourself in the crossfire of some pretty big battles. For all these reasons, Gravemind is on the list. And it's a meme, but honorable mentions for Halo 2 are every other level. Halo 2 Legendary is ridiculous. On to Halo 3, we have Cortana. Halo 3, in my opinion, is the second easiest Halo game behind only ODST. There's some difficult parts, but none of the levels I think are that challenging, until you get to Cortana. Halo 3's Flood overall are much weaker than the first two games. Halo 1's Flood could take a bit of damage and didn't have a weak spot. Halo 2's Flood have a weak spot for precision weapons, but are freaking tanks otherwise, whereas Halo 3's Flood have the easiest weak spot to hit and one-shot them with, but regardless, you can kill a combat form very quickly with any weapon, or with melees. They're the only Flood where melees are actually effective. So in Floodgate and the Covenant, the only two Flood levels prior, they aren't bad to fight at all. But the main culprit in Cortana is the ranged pure forms. You get into these big rooms, and for whatever reason, there are so many pure forms, and of course, they all run away and onto the ceiling so they can just melt you from a distance. They don't have a weak spot for precision weapons, so unless you can find a Needler or a Brute Shot or something on the ground, you are pretty much just screwed and have to try and land sticks and YOLO your way closer to them. There's really just 3 rooms, though, where this can be a problem. The first is in the first big fight of the mission, the second is in this room with the Cortana terminal, and the third, the worst offender, is this god-awful room where you have to work your way up from the bottom. The good thing about Cortana is that it is relatively short. Cortana is a bad level, and it's made worse by how difficult it is, and that's why it's on my list. Other Halo 3 honorable mentions? None. I don't think any other level is that difficult at all. Like I said, I think it's the second easiest game behind ODST. So what ODST level could possibly be on this list? If you played ODST by yourself on Legendary, then you know the answer. It's Coastal Highway. Coastal Highway starts with you escorting Virgil around New Mombasa, nothing too different than the rest of the game, and it ends with a fun holdout section. I have nothing to say about the beginning or end. They're a lot of fun. But everything in between that, oh my god. Basically, you're in a Warthog with Buck as the gunner, and you have to escort Darren Virgil in an Oliphant. If they take too much damage, they die and you lose. This forces you to stay aggressive instead of just being able to hang back and take your time. That's difficult, but whatever, it is what it is. What makes this section borderline unplayable is that Buck sucks. There will be a Banshee raining down fire on you, about to blow you up, and he just won't shoot. His AI is so bad, but he's your only gunner, so you have to do a bunch of stupid stuff to compensate, like get out of the Warthog and use it for cover, but the issue is that if you take too long, then Darren the engineer are gonna die. It's awful. I don't think levels are bad because they're difficult, like Gravemind in Halo 2 is my favorite level ever. Cortana I think sucks because ranged forms are unfun to fight, not necessarily because it's hard. This level though is completely ruined by its difficulty because it's not even difficult, it's just BS. Coastal Highway sucks in terms of difficulty and how fun it is to play, and that's why I have it listed. Other ODST mentions, none. It's overall a really easy campaign. Reach is a weird game for me because I think its Legendary overall is one of the tougher ones, but there really aren't levels that stick out to me. It's more just consistently tough throughout without having huge difficulty spikes thrown in on top of it. With one major exception, that being Long Night of Solace and its Saber section. Now, I will mention in this case, there is a big difference between the Master Chief Collection and the original version. In the original version, the Saber section is difficult for sure, but it's not aggravating. It feels challenging, but not overly so. In the MCC, this is not the case because the enemy's aggression for whatever reason is tied to the tick rate, not to be confused with the frame rate. In the original, the tick rate is 30, in MCC, the tick rate is 60. This means all the enemy fighters are super aggressive, and the tick rate change, for the record, affects everything on MCC, not just Long Night of Solace, but this is where it makes the biggest impact by far. Playing on Legendary, there still is skill to it. You can watch Halo Reach speedrunners just decimate everything, but for me, and I'm guessing most players, the best strategy here is to hide behind Anchor 9. This is what I did my last Reach playthrough, and I still died a lot, and this level made me rethink my life. Otherwise, for Reach, again, I don't think anything else stands out as super difficult. It's a tough game for sure, though. For Halo 4, I have Forerunner. I'll go ahead and spoil it. This isn't going to be my pick for toughest level, but I think it's the toughest level in Halo 4 still, and it's the one that always gave me the most problems. I'm gonna be brief, though. The main problem area is this section with the Covenant guarding the generators or whatever. I don't even remember what these are supposed to be. There's a few banshees and ghosts around you, so you have to be in a vehicle, but that's still not much better than being on foot, because even if you're in a ghost or a banshee, you'll get melted pretty quick. Otherwise, this level is a little sparse on ammo. It's really long, and I think it has some of Halo 4's toughest fights, so thought I'd mention it. The next two levels, people are probably going to get mad at me for, but I'm going to be brief on these as well for different reasons. I have played the Breaking on Legendary, but I skipped the 3 Warden Eternal fight because ain't no way was I going to subject myself to another Warden Eternal fight at all. I was ready to be done with the game at that point, so I'm speculating that this fight really sucks and I'm putting the Breaking on the list because of that. But this one also isn't going to be my pick anyway, so there you go. For Infinite, I have House of Reckoning. Full disclosure on Infinite, I have not played this game on Legendary, so this is also speculation. But based on my normal playthroughs, I thought this was the toughest level. You have the firefight sections, followed by the Elite Sword boss, who I had trouble with even on normal, then the Escharum boss fight. So compared to the other Infinite levels on my normal playthroughs, I think this was by far the hardest, and I know that. How it compares to the other games on Legendary, I don't know because I haven't played it on Legendary. So this one is kind of just an honorable mention because I can't rank it accurately anyway. So which Halo level do I think is the most difficult? For me, it's a toss-up between 2 levels, Regret and Gravemind. Regret has, I think, the 2 hardest parts of the entire game in this awful room and the boss fight at the end. Gravemind has its own crazy sections though, and it's longer, but room to room, I don't think it's too bad after the very beginning. My own bias tells me that Regret is more difficult. It's the more difficult level for me at least. But trying to be objective and look at it from the average player's point of view, I think the correct answer is Gravemind. So congratulations, Gravemind. May you continue to provide Halo fans nightmare fuel for years to come. Be sure to let me know your pick for toughest or other levels that deserve to be mentioned at least. And if you like this video, then click the video on screen to watch me beat CE on Legendary in under 3 hours without speedrun tricks. I'll catch you next time.